Hello, everybody. Welcome into Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are welcome to the show, everybody. We have a big show today. We're going to be recapping a lot of action from last night, including the two NBA and NHL games. We're going to start in the NBA, talking about the 2-1 seeds dismantling the other teams, both the Celtics and the Thunder. Won pretty handily in game one of their series, so we will talk about that, and then we will continue on talking about some thrilling hockey games. They went into overtime and double overtime last night, so we'll talk about those, and we'll finish off our show with some breaking news as a former translator for Shohei Ohtani, Ipe, has pled guilty as of just a couple minutes ago, actually. So we'll break down the whole Shohei Ohtani, Ipe Mahazura saga. We'll break everything down, and we'll talk about how we got to this point at the end of our show. But before we do, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. I appreciate everybody for sticking around and watching the show. Again, if you have a burning question you need to ask about sports, just leave a message with your donation. That's the link that's on the screen currently. That's gsmcpodcast.net. But like I was saying, we're going to start off our show today in the NBA. We're going to start off with OKC, the youngest team ever to make it this far in the playoffs, the youngest team ever to be the 1 seed in the West, the youngest team ever to win a second round playoff matchup, and they did it pretty handily, taking care of the Luka and Kyrie Mavericks by nearly 30 points, winning 117-95. There are a couple things in this game, and it showed weaknesses for both teams, especially the Mavericks. Luka was clamped up all night. Lou Dort did an incredible job on him. He was able to shut him down. I mean, whenever you hold Luka to less than 20 points, it's a win. You hold him to 19 points on 6 of 19 shooting, 1 of 8 from 3. He did a great job on Luka Doncic last night, and really the one that was causing trouble for the Thunder was Daniel Gafford. Kyrie had a couple of nice plays down the stretch on offense, but really OKC was dominating this game through and through. Daniel Gafford gave the Thunder some fits inside. He came up with a lot of huge blocks down the stretch of that game, especially in the last half of the game. The second half, he came up with like 3 or 4 blocks, 3 or 4 straight possessions. He was the best player on the court for them, and he wasn't particularly great. He missed a lot of open chances. Not that it would have made that big a difference, but his touch around the rim wasn't really there. He could have had a better game. He shot 5 from 12 from the field, which overall isn't bad, but when when Luka isn't giving you the offense that you expect out of him, and you're the one that's being able to get pressure, especially on the inside, the Thunder, their defense is really underrated. That's a part of their game that doesn't get talked about enough. We talk about the Timberwolves defense all the time. We talk about the Celtics defense, but we forget about the Thunder. The Thunder, much like the Celtics, and we fall in love with their offense, but the Thunder, much like the Celtics, have a top 5 offense and a top 5 defense in the league. And as we're starting to see more in this second round, these teams with the elite defenses are sticking around because anyone can put up points in this league. It's the NBA. All of these guys are here for a reason. All of them are here because they're really good at putting the ball in the basket at the end of the day. They're really good at that. So you can get points from a lot of people. It's not the hardest thing in the world to get 100 points in a game, but no one that's played the Thunder has been able to hit that mark yet. Now, granted, it was all against the Pelicans, and they've they did a really good job against Luka and the Mavericks last night, but that was just game one. So in their 5 games, they've played a shorthanded Pelican squad and a and one game against the Mavericks, who from time to time get cold. So I'm not ready to count this defense as the best after just watching the Timberwolves defense, which impressed me a lot more against the Nuggets in their game too. But we're starting to see these separators in the playoffs. They talk about being able to get it done on defense, being a major separator in the postseason, and we're starting to really see that take form, take shape here with the Thunder. Really, not the narrative surrounding them as they enter the postseason was they're too young to get this done. They're not old enough. They aren't. They aren't experienced. Something's going to happen, and they're not going to be able to keep their composure. And they've done a great job. Now, granted, they haven't had to face that much adversity. Outside of the first game against the Pelicans, they've been pretty comfortable in almost every single game this postseason, which is a really good spot to be. So they haven't really been tested yet. I'm curious to see what happens if they are tested in a high leverage situation. But they've done it all season. You know, they're the one seed in a tough Western Conference for a reason. OKC with Shea and Chet and Jalen Williams, and these guys have been really good. They've really stepped up, and they are playing really good together as a team. You know, like I said, you don't get to that one seed in the West without being a special basketball team, especially when you're competing with the likes of Jokic and the Nuggets, and you're competing with Anthony Edwards and Cat, and now 4-time Defensive Player of the Year Rudy Gobert. You know, you don't get there by being a team that can't win in high leverage situations, a team that can't go out and dominate you on any given night. And the Thunder check every single one of those boxes off. The Thunder are very, very good at basketball, and I feel like they've definitely been a little underrated when we're doing analysis here in the playoffs, at least on the wider sphere, and it comes with the territory. It happened with the Nuggets last season. If you remember, there was a lot of complaints when the finals ended up being the Nuggets instead of the Lakers, because you could have had this LA Miami, and instead the smaller market of Denver comes ahead, wins the championship, and you could see the pundits on some of these major networks weren't prepared to cover a team like the Nuggets because they had come from a smaller market, a market that you're not getting coverage from every day. They weren't ready for that to be the series. They wanted it to be LA versus Miami. You have these two huge markets that you can talk about, but instead smaller markets are coming out, and it's a similar situation with OKC this year. It's not going to happen again with Denver because they're the national champs. There's been plenty of attention on them, but OKC has really flown under the radar from a lot of people, and it's definitely a lot because they're in Oklahoma. Oklahoma City is one of the smallest markets in the entire NBA. You know, so they kind of get lost in the shuffle sometimes, but this team is really good. This team is really good, and they're showing it. You know, like I said, they've only really had to play one tight game this whole series, and if they can continue to shut down Luka, if they can keep him below 20 points, this is gonna be a breeze of a series. The Mavericks are a team that they run by having Luka outpace everybody. Luka will outpace everybody. Kyrie will go and do his thing, and he'll be the third or second highest scorer. Those two have to combine for at least 60 points for this team to win. You know, and last night they only combined for 39. You know, they lose by almost by 27 or 22, I guess. But they lose by 22, and they're about 20. Then they're 21 points off of that 60 point mark that generally they need to win. So you can kind of see that the role players can only do so much for Dallas, and you know it definitely doesn't help when your team shoots 39% from the floor, 34% from three. and then your opponent shoots 44% and 45%. So it definitely doesn't help that was the case, but you have to for Dallas to win, they need Kyrie and Luka to combine for 60 points, and they lose by 22. They were 21 points off of that mark, so you can kind of see exactly where I'm coming from here, how that would have made a difference. Obviously, 21 more points would make a difference, but uh, this is not the way the series is gonna go, because the reason, like I said, the reason that the Mavericks have gotten here is because they have the high octane, uh, top of the shelf stars that they can rely on to get them out of situations. They had a bad game. Now, that's not to say that the defense didn't play a part in that. The defense was huge in playing a part in that, but it is it's not going to be this easy for the Thunder for the rest of the series. They're not going to be able to shut down Luka like they did in Game 1 every game. And if they are, they'll sweep them. But it's going to be, there should be more fun games. The Mavericks have the offense to keep up even against a defense like this. So we'll see what happens in the rest of the series. But in the next segment coming up, we are going to move on to the other basketball game, the Celtics dominating the Cleveland Cavaliers, also winning on a very similar score. But we'll talk about that game coming up next, here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I wanna be the greatest. Everybody on the fake shit. I look around and feel like everybody is the fakest. I make this every day and I'm impatient. Hoping one day I blow up from the basement. Statement, the top is so vacant. I don't hear shit that I think is amazing. Waiting for my day when I'm playing. Sold out shows are 1,000 faces. Hey, give me that crown. Get in my way and to be put down. It ain't replace all this my sound. If I want that shit, then I'll get it right now. I'm losing it, the news it fits. I'm losing shit, a stupid myth. You choose to live or choose to dip. You choose to fight or lose your grip and lose a gift. Oh. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind? Please, Lord, give me a sign, a sign. I feel like I'm losing my mind. Is everybody in the world blind?
Welcome back, everybody, to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you were just tuning in, we just broke down the Mavs Thunder game that took place last night, where the Thunder absolutely dominated on almost all facets of the game. Daniel Gafford gave them some fits on the inside, but outside of that, they were pretty much dominant on every phase of the floor. The other basketball game, the Celtics-Cavs, we will be covering that in just a second, talking about the Celtics continuing their roll through a weak Eastern Conference. But before we do, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. That link on the screen right now, gsmcpodcast.net. If you do leave a donation, leave a message with it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you have a burning question about sports, leave a comment, leave a donation. We'll get to that as soon as we can, and you can control what we talk about here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Appreciate everybody for tuning in, hanging out, and watching, talking some sports. But yeah, like I was saying, we are going to move into some more basketball coverage, talking about the Celtics. Celtics jump out to an early series lead. They're up 1-0 after leading end to end in that first game against the Magic. Against the Cavs. Donovan Mitchell had a good game. He got taken out early. He could have put up 40 points in this game if he needed to, but they they pulled him early because this game was kind of out of reach for quite some time. On the other end of the floor, Jason Tatum did not have a good game, but when you have White to come and save you from that, and you have everybody else on your team that can come in and be that kind of presence that uh, you know that presence that can come in and really pick up the slack from you. Jaylen Brown, Derek White played a huge part in keeping the Celtics on top, and really they just dominated. The Cavs don't have that inside presence to be able to deal with even Al Horford, who had himself a pretty solid game, starting in place of Kristaps Porzingis. Porzingis, who should be back soon. It's scary to think that this Celtics team isn't even at full strength. We saw Jason Tatum kind of take a back seat. Like I said, 7 of 19. He hasn't really shot well all playoffs long. He'll start shooting soon, but Derek White comes in, makes 7 threes. Super duper impressive performance from him. He leads second leading scorer on the team, and he's been huge for them all playoffs long. He's been a huge part of how things are going for the Boston Celtics. Only losing one game against the Heat, a game where they shoot 50% from three, and that's really the best way to beat the Celtics. The Celtics, especially in a weak Eastern Conference, that only other real threat is probably the only other real threat remaining to the Celtics is probably the Knicks. They're going to be able to match them physically on the inside, and with Jalen Brunson, be able to outduel the best they have. It's going to be tough for anybody in the East to take the Celtics. The Celtics have been dominant, more dominant than any other team in recent memory, by a pretty wide margin. But they come in, the Cleveland Cavaliers come in, and like I said, they weren't the best team in that series against the Magic. They got blown out a couple times. If you look at the comparison, the stats, they lost the series just by overall points. They scored less points, and it wasn't really that close. It was by like 20 or 30 points that they lost that series by, and now they're going to go into the most dominant team, a team that is head and shoulders above the rest of the Eastern Conference. If you look at the standings, they're like at least 13 games up on the Knicks. And then all the way Knicks to Heat were separated by like less than 5 games. So you have, at this point, a team that just has seen very little resistance all season. They won 64 games. That's not something that's easy to accomplish. You're getting into some territory for the greatest team of all time, by record at least. The 73-9 Warriors, that of recent memory. You're kind of getting into that territory now. They're not there. This team has holes, and Jason Tatum is too inconsistent to be that number one star on the best team of all time. But he has a whole army of people that can come in and pick up the slack. Pritchard had a huge game off the bench. He scored 16 points. Drew Holiday is your point guard, and he kind of gets lost in the mix. Jaylen Brown is also a max player, and Derek White is huge. His 3-point shot making is huge, and you're gonna get Kristaps Porzingis back. So this team isn't at full strength yet, and it's gonna be really tough for anybody in the Eastern Conference to give them a run for their money, especially a team like the Cavaliers, who they probably shouldn't have won that first round series anyway. The Magic just couldn't compete on the road. They couldn't show that same kind of tenacity. But if they were able to show up and hold a lead in Game 7, the Magic wouldn't give the Celtics too much of a fight either. But I don't see this series really playing out too well for the Cavaliers. I would be shocked if they even took a game. Honestly, the Celtics team is that good. They do have their nights sometime. They do have their nights sometimes, but doesn't usually work out that way. where the Celtics just won't show up, especially in the playoffs. Now, Jason Tatum, like I said, if they're able to win games by 30 points without their big star having a good game, it's it's scary to think about how much they'd win by if they were having a good game. Now, I did say that the Celtics are beatable. We saw a shorthanded Heat team win a game against them where they had to shoot 50% from 3. The Cavs have shooters on their team. They're really missing Jarrett Allen, his inside presence. That they're really missing that because Darius Garland has been struggling. He's been on an incredibly cold streak recently, and as much as Donovan Mitchell is doing, he's not the most efficient player. He was 12 for 25 from the floor. And this was a good Donovan Mitchell game. Don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to bash this Donovan Mitchell game. It was a good game from Donovan Mitchell, but even in his good games, even his games where he's shooting, when he's shooting 50% from the field, basically, it's not terribly efficient. And he has 33 points. It's fine. He's doing his best. He got pulled early in this game to let the bench go. Give him a little more rest. But overall, this is one of those series that just already feels like it's over before it began. And I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts on this before we wrap up this segment. But the Boston Celtics just seem like they're on a mission to the finals. Again, when you're head and shoulders above the rest in the East. And I think the Knicks can give them a fight. I think the physicality that they've been playing with, the way that they beat the Sixers, the way that Jalen Brunson has been able to keep pace with literally anyone so far at will, it seems like he's just going to put up 40 points a night, Jalen Brunson is. But we'll have to see with the rest of the series. It's never a good idea to call it one game in. You never want to overreact because plenty of things can happen that can change stuff. That can change how the series goes. But it's going to be tough to oust the Celtics. It really is going to be tough. It's the same story, defense. The Celtics have a really good defense. They're also ranked up there. Defense is taking over. We did a little conversation about how offense kind of dips in the postseason when we were talking about is there a defense problem in the NBA. But I mean, we're seeing the teams that are really starting to dominate in this more competitive round are the teams that have that elite defense. The Timberwolves, the Celtics, and the Knicks and the we just spent like 15 minutes talking about them. Name is slipping my mind. The Thunder. Sorry about that. Those 4 teams that have the best defenses are currently dominating their series. Granted, it's only been a game or 2 for all of them, but they're all winning their series, and it seems like there's going to be less scoring as we start to eliminate teams. But anyway, in our next segment, we're going to transition out of basketball. We're going to talk a little bit of baseball, actually. There's been some breaking baseball news, multiple news breaks in baseball, so we will talk about that coming up next on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
Looking for your daily fix of sports talk without having to pay for it? GSMC Sports Network is available on YouTube. Just search GSMC Sports Network. Get your fix of daily sports talk shows on YouTube, absolutely free. NFL, college football, NBA, MLB, MMA, UFC, fantasy football, and so much more. GSMC Sports Network has shows running all day long, with new sports shows starting every 2 hours. Just like on your favorite cable sports channel, except GSMC Sports Network is absolutely free. Just search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube to catch one of your new favorite shows, like the GSMC College Football Podcast, Chip Shot Football Podcast, Hoops and Heels Women's Sports Podcast, GSMC Basketball Podcast, and so many more. Check it out for yourself. GSMC Sports Network, now available on YouTube absolutely free. Search GSMC Sports Network on YouTube right now.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just spent the first half of our show talking about basketball. We're gonna move into some baseball. We broke down the games from last night earlier. We're going to move into some breaking news in baseball, and there's two pieces of breaking news. But before we get into that, remember, if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message should pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you have a burning question about sports you need answers, go to that link, gsmcpodcast.net. We appreciate anything you do give. Appreciate all of you for supporting and watching, taking time out of your afternoon to talk some sports with me. But like I was saying, we're going to move into some baseball. And there's two pieces of breaking news. We're going to start off with this one. Ippei, the ex-interpreter for Shohei Ohtani, pled guilty to tax fraud and bank fraud as well. For those who are unaware of the story, back at the beginning of the season, so this takes place about a month ago, right before the season starts, it came out that that Shohei Ohtani, his former interpreter, stole millions of dollars from Shohei to illegally gamble. He used a bookie in Korea. He embezzled it, and new stuff has come out saying he embezzled this stuff through Ryan Boyan of the Real Housewives to pay gambling debts, and he had over $4 million in gambling debt, and he stole from Shohei Ohtani. There was an investigation, or there still is an investigation going on to see how involved, or if Shohei Ohtani was even involved in any of this, because even though none of the bets were on baseball, you don't want to start anything happening. It doesn't seem like at this point Shohei Ohtani pressed charges against Ippei, and he has pled guilty to it. So this is going to come with, it's not just one of those things where if you're a friend, you say, hey, take this for me. This is not what happened. He stole nearly $17 million from Shohei Ohtani. The maximum sentence he can get is 33 years from this. So this isn't just a slap on the wrist that you say, hey, buddy, I'm in some deep water. I need you to take the heat for me. This is 33 years, up to 33 years of your life, and up to $1 million of his own money that he could get. Now, he did just plead guilty, and that's the maximum sentence. So it's probably going to be less than that, but he's going to get some real prison time for this. Ippei Mizuhara, who Shohei has said he thought of him as like his best friend. He'd been his interpreter the whole time he had been in the major leagues. He'd basically been his slice of home since he'd been there. Now, Shohei Ohtani speaks a little bit of English, but it's nice to have someone from Japan talk your own language too sometimes. And it's tough. It's a tough situation. Obviously, good that it's getting figured out. Good that Shohei Ohtani didn't have any part of this, because it could have definitely gotten messy if Shohei Ohtani played a part in this. But he did not, thankfully, and he's going to continue to be one of the all-time greats in baseball. He's still got a long career ahead of him. He just signed a $700 million deal to move to the Dodgers, across town from the Los Angeles Angels to the Los Angeles Dodgers. But Ippei pleads guilty to this, and it's good that they're getting this taken care of, because this is the kind of thing I've talked about gambling a bunch in the past on this program here. Gambling in sports are two things that there's definitely a slippery slope, especially when sports gambling is involved, because sports are such it's such a huge marketplace. So the such a huge marketplace for ideas and money and stuff, and so much of it is is fairness. Fairness is an important part of sports, and if it's rigged, and there's sports book taking part of it, or your top players are rigging the games, it takes away a lot from it, and the integrity is the most important part of a sport. That's really what it comes down to, and gambling makes you lose all the integrity. Thank goodness that it's not deeper than uh, he was stole almost $17 million, uh, which is insane. It obviously wasn't all at once, but there was a big $4 million debt. He began placing bets in September of 2021, uh, and wasn't very good at it. But he kept stealing some money, and it just racked up. It got up to $17 million. Uh, there was huge transfers, hundreds of thousands of dollars at a time. Uh, in 2022 to 2023, there were over $15 million from February to October. So just over a year, in like a year and a half, there were over $100 million, or excuse me, over $15 million transferred to this bookie. Uh, Ipe pretended to be Shohei for bank transfers, so that's where you get the bank fraud from, and that's how it got passed to Shohei for 3 years basically. Uh, he was calling the bank and authorizing these transfers, pretending to be Shohei Ohtani. Uh, so good thing that they got this figured out. There are uh, lots of consequences. Like I said, up to 33 years in prison for him. He pleads guilty, so we'll see what the final. We'll see the final one. We'll see the final sentencing. The sentencing hearing hasn't been set yet, but he pled guilty, so it's just going to be up to 33 years and $1.25 million. So he's probably going to get less than that. I'm not a lawyer. I don't know how much less it'll be, but he'll probably get less than that. And then the other piece of breaking news in baseball today, we had a top pitching prospect, Paul Skeens, the number 2 overall pick in the draft last year, or no, number 3 overall pick in the draft last year. Paul Skeens, pitcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates, is going to be taking his first MLB. He's going to be making his MLB debut against the Cubs coming up soon. It's going to be electric against the Cubs on Saturday. Saturday is his debut day. It's so good to see all these top prospects come up at once. There's new rules in baseball surrounding draft picks. If you bring up someone and they do a good job, you'll get an extra first round pick, basically. So baseball's trying to incentivize infusing the sport with young talent right now, and it's a really great idea, and it's working really well. So good for the Pirates. The Pirates, Skeens, who these guys have been coming up really quickly. His teammate, Dylan Cruz, is almost ready to come up as well. But right now, Paul Skeens is coming up on Saturday. We saw Jackson Holliday make his debut, so we're seeing a lot of these top 10 prospects in the league make their debuts, and we'll see even more of them as the season continues to go on. But facing off against a now healthy Cubs team, it's not going to be an easy first matchup. But it's always good, You get your you get thrown into the fire. You'll see if you can make it. It's like I said, not going to be an easy pitching matchup, but if he can deal with a Cubs lineup that's getting Bellinger and Seiya Suzuki back, he'll be able to deal with a vast majority of the lineups in the MLB. So good luck, Paul Skeens. Go dominate out there. Go help the Pirates be good again. It's been a while since Pittsburgh had a good baseball team. But anyway, we are going to move out of baseball into hockey to finish off our show in the next two segments. We're going to be breaking down the two games from last night, the double overtime thriller and the incredible comeback by the Colorado Avalanche that also went into overtime. So stick around for that. We'll be right back on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network.
For the best and latest podcasts available anywhere, go to the podcast app on your cell phone and type in GSMC to access free content-rich podcasts on health and wellness, book reviews, sports, entertainment, relationships, social media, movies, technology, finance, and even weird news. Subscribe and download the GSMC Podcast Network's family of shows, available everywhere podcasts are found.
Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I am your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we just finished breaking down the two pieces of breaking news in baseball. Paul Skeens making his debut on Saturday against the Chicago Cubs, and Ippei Mahazura, who is going to be who pled guilty to bank and tax fraud in the scandal, the Shohei Ohtani gambling scandal. He pled guilty, so Shohei's name is basically in the clear at this point. They're still finishing up the investigation in the MLB, but nothing should come of that, thankfully. It's good for the sport that nothing's going to happen from that. So hopefully things can continue to be on the up and up for Shohei and the Dodgers, and that his name isn't tarnished too much from a scandal as big as this one was. But we're going to move out of baseball, move out of basketball that we talked about in the first two segments, and we're going to move into hockey. There were two incredible hockey games last night. Both of them went into overtime. One of them went into double overtime, and both of them had huge comebacks in it from the ending up the winning team. But before we get into those games, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. Appreciate anything you do give. Appreciate you taking your time. If you have a burning question you need me to answer about sports, go ahead and leave a comment or a donation on the link that's on the screen right now. That's gsmcpodcast.net. You guys, we appreciate all of you for watching, appreciate you for donating, appreciate you spending your beautiful afternoon with me talking some sports. But like I was saying, we're going to talk about the New York Rangers double overtime. We're going to start off with the first game, the double overtime thriller between the Rangers and the Carolina Hurricanes. New York Rangers are up 2-0 now in that series. They continue to dominate somehow. Although if you're watching the games, really the Carolina Hurricanes look like a much better team. The Rangers improved to 6-0 in the playoffs. They're the only team in the NBA they're the only team in the NHL to not lose a game in the playoffs. Igor Shesterkin, their goalie, continues his hot streak. He had more than 50 saves in this game. An incredible performance. He kept them alive. The Carolina Hurricanes had chance after chance after chance. There were huge scrums in front of the net in the first overtime and the second overtime at the end of the third period when it was a tie game, and they just were not able to get it past Igor Shesterkin. It was an incredible performance from him. Something that if they're able to win the series, it's a huge performance in Game 2 to keep the series up at home, to go up 2-0 heading into Carolina, which famously is a very tough place to play. He has a streak of 25 straight games in the playoffs, allowing 3 goals or less, and that stayed alive. He stood on his head. The way this game ended had some controversy, though. There was a penalty And in hockey, for those who don't know, any penalty, you get sent to the penalty box for 2 minutes. So your team is a man down for 2 minutes. Makes it a lot easier for the other team to score. More space on the ice to get the puck through. But anyway, this penalty, it was called cross-checking. And I urge you guys to go back and take a look at this real quick. It was a really weak cross-check call. Again, we kind of had this discussion yesterday in the Pacers-Knicks game with the moving screen, where technically by the letter of the law it was a penalty, but you never want to decide especially in double overtime in a conference semifinal matchup. You don't want to blow that whistle, and it's not the refs' fault they lost. The Rangers were putting really good pressure on the power play. Whenever their special teams is on, they have a really, really good... That's when they dominate. This game, and really this whole series so far through 2 games, aside from one period, the first period of Game 1, the Carolina Hurricanes have looked like the better team, and yet they're down 2-0. When it's 5-on-5, the Hurricanes are straight up just a better team. Their offensive pressure, the ability to keep it in the zone, their ability to get scoring chances, but the combination of Igor Shesterkin and the lack of discipline by the Hurricanes. Both of these teams were really undisciplined. There were combined like 10 penalties in this game, and Jacob Trouba, defenseman for the Rangers, had 3 penalties. He also had an attempted murder in the first overtime, which in hockey, obviously it's a physical sport. You're allowed to hit people. You're allowed to go through and body check them, slam them against the boards. What you're not allowed to do is leave the ice and jump into your opponent. What Jacob Trouba did or attempted to do was spear a man. He jumped out of the ice. The Carolina, I believe it was Sebastian Aho, he ducked out of the way, and Jacob Trouba into the glass. This is the glass right here. He goes flying, ends up horizontal, does a little vibration, and comes down. He headbutts this wall. His skates are at the same level as his head. In what would have been a brutal hit if he had connected, but he goes headfirst into the board. It was insane. No penalty was called, although that should have been a penalty. It would have been his 4th of the day, which ridiculous. You can't be taking that many penalties. Both of these teams have been undisciplined. It's been incredibly physical, and the Rangers' power play penalty kill has been really good. Just been really good all series, and Igor Shesterkin has been a huge part of them keeping in it. The Rangers should not have won this game. They really shouldn't have. They were not the better team. They haven't been the better team all series, and yet they're up 2-0. And I'm sure a lot of that has to do with home crowd advantage, home ice advantage. Playing in Madison Square Garden, whether it be basketball or it be hockey, it's a great home ice advantage. It's a great hometown advantage to have. You have these incredible fans, and it's always packed. But, the Rangers are able to outlast. And overtime in hockey is brutal. Overtime in playoff hockey is even more brutal. Generally, the refs swallow their whistle and they let them go. That's why we see some of those hits, like that Jacob Trouba one I was describing, be let go, because in general that's usually a penalty. But the refs did play a big part of this game, and it's a shame. Vinny Trocheck scores the game winner, win 4-3 in double overtime. A heartbreaking loss if you are the Carolina Hurricanes, and a tough one as you fall behind 2-0. You do get to head back home to Carolina, where you also have a pretty good home crowd. But the Rangers fans travel well, so it's not going to be the same as if you were playing a team like the Islanders, that's like they did in the first round. I'm still not too worried. Like I said, the Hurricanes have been the better team. They just need to get one pass. They just need to get a couple past Shesterkin. Shesterkin has been huge. The goaltending has been incredible. It's reminding me of the Henrik Lundqvist era. Obviously, it's a lot easier to do those comparisons when you're playing on the Rangers. Kind of remind you of him, but when you're getting comparisons to the King, it's pretty good. Not that bad overall. Igor Shesterkin has been incredible, and really the goaltending this entire postseason has been pretty good. Frederik Andersen on the other side for Carolina. To get to double overtime, some of the shots that he had to turn away were incredible as well. He didn't have quite the same trouble as Shesterkin, who was peppered with shots all night long, especially down the stretch. But the goaltending all playoffs long has been really exciting. Sergei Bobrovsky has been really good. Georgiev has been really good at points, and so has Jake Ottinger. We'll talk about them in just a second coming up, actually. But no, there's been a lot of really, really good goaltending performances in the playoffs, and that's why we watch. That's why we love to watch. The offense has had an uptick recently. As with all sports, and hockey right now is going through one of the more obvious ones. Every sport goes in waves from defense is great and offense sucks to, get in the valley where offense is great and defense sucks. It happens in every sport. It's like a convergent evolution arms race kind of thing. The defense bulks up to a point where the offense can't catch up, and then the offense says, "Oh, I see you," and then they bulk up and pass the defense, and then it's a balancing. And right now, we've crossed that midway point where goalies and defense were so dominant for so long, and now we're getting to the point where we're hitting a point where offense is started. They're starting to pass each other, and it's always a cool moment in sports when we see that. The NBA has been way past that. We're actually starting to see a shift more back towards defense. They're kind of on the opposite end of that slope, but they're at the top of that. They're heading back down. But we'll talk a bit more about this as we head into the final segment here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. We'll break down the other overtime hockey game, so stick around for that. We'll be right back here on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Welcome back to Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. I'm your host, Jeremy Lapidus. If you are just tuning in, we have been covering hockey in the last segment. We talked about Ipe and Paul Skeens in our third segment, and in our first two segments, we broke down the two NBA games from last night. We're going to finish off our show today talking about the overtime game, the incredible comeback by the Colorado Avalanche in Game 1 between them and the Dallas Stars. But before we get into that, remember that if you would like to be an even bigger part of the show than you already are, all you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net. Leave a tip or donation with a message in it. That message will pop up on the bottom of the screen for you, me, and everybody else around the world to see. If you have a burning question about sports, leave a donation. I will get to it as soon as I can. You can control what we talk about here. All you need to do is go to gsmcpodcast.net, leave that tip or donation. We appreciate anything you do give. appreciate you taking the time to talk some sports with me on a beautiful Wednesday afternoon. But like I was saying, we're going to finish off our show talking a little more hockey. Colorado finishes off an incredible comeback to win Game 1 in Dallas. Dallas coming off a tough 7-game series with the defending champions, defending Stanley Cup champions, the Vegas Golden Knights. And now they get the honor of playing MVP or most MVP frontrunner Nathan MacKinnon and his squad of incredibly high octane offense, Colorado Avalanche. So they go from a great defense and great goaltending to a really good defense, fine goaltending, and an elite offense. It's a completely different beast. This is a similar kind of opponent that Colorado played, and they dominated. They destroyed them. Their offensive presence, their ability to get pucks to the front of the net against Winnipeg was something that was incredible to watch. They made a good Winnipeg defense look like one of the worst defenses in the league, and a Vezina, the front runner for the Vezina Trophy, the best goaltender in the league, look bad. Giving up at least 5 goals in every single game is not the look you want if you are a potential Vezina winner. But Colorado made him look silly, and down 3-0 in the first period to be able to come back in and force overtime, and even force it, really, is impressive, especially with the way that Dallas was playing. Even down the stretch, they were getting a lot of really good opportunities. Dallas is a really deep team. They go 4 lines deep with stars, and they have a really good goaltender. Their defensive core is nothing to scoff at, but Colorado, their backs against the wall, they're going to be able to put up points. There's a reason they've been so good for so long. There's a reason that Nathan MacKinnon is the front runner for MVP, for the Hart Trophy. He's really good. He's so good. And so is the rest of that offense. And it's going to be real tough, especially if Georgiev can lock in the way that he did against in periods after that first period. If that's the Georgiev that they're going to get, it's going to be tough for Dallas. Now, Dallas did have a lot of opportunities, and they missed the net a couple times. So it wasn't their greatest game finishing-wise. They probably should have won this. Again, going up 3-0 in that first period, maybe they got too comfortable. They do call a 3-goal lead in hockey the most dangerous lead in the sport because you get a little comfortable, and then they get a goal. You're like, oh, it's fine. We're still up 2. And then they get another, and then it's okay. It's time to lock in. But at that point, the other team's got momentum. And momentum is a huge thing in sports. I was talking with, in hockey especially, momentum is such a huge thing. I was talking with one of my buddies who has been a hockey player his whole life, and the wave of energy that it gives you, because hockey is such a grueling sport. It's so physical that whoever, especially at the end of games and these long overtime games, if you have that momentum, that extra little energy, that extra little motivation that is pushing you forward, you're going to be a better team, because it takes a lot of willpower to exert that much energy out there. It really does. Hockey is a demanding sport. So these guys, and they'll go out, they give it their all, but having that little bit of momentum is huge. And the Avalanche had all the momentum heading into that overtime period, and they kept it. They were able to get one past Ottinger, win the game, and set up an interesting thing, because Colorado started slow in Game 1 against Winnipeg too. Winnipeg won like 7-5 in that game, and they didn't do that again. They lost in 5 games. So this is going to be an interesting series. Dallas is a team that's bounced back. Again, they were down 0-2 against Vegas, against the defending Stanley Cup champions. So neither of these teams should be counted out. Both of them have the potential to make huge, major comebacks, and we've seen it already in this postseason from both of these teams. it's going to be interesting. Dallas's offense needs to kick it into gear a little more. Ottinger and the defense played fine. Giving up 4 goals to Colorado isn't bad. It's not good. If you really, the recipe for success against them is 3 or less. But they're just gonna have to lock in a little more. Like I said, that first period was awesome for the Stars. They were dominating all facets of the game. Colorado didn't look ready for them, and I think they just got too comfortable. Coaches need to get into them and say, hey, let's not let ourselves get too comfortable again. But anyway, overtime thrillers in hockey, 2 dominant performances by 1 seeds in basketball, and some breaking news in baseball. I'd call that a good day. But anyway, thank you everybody so much for tuning in to today's episode of Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. We'll be back here tomorrow, same time, same place, covering the 1 NBA game, 2 hockey games, and any other major news that comes in the next 24 hours in the sports world. Stick around for that. I'll see you tomorrow on Sports by GSMC Podcast Network. Bye-bye.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet.